Hello everyone and welcome back to Astro49 reads Long Live the Pumpkin Queen. Please like, share, subscribe, let me know what you think of the narration down below. Picking back up on chapter 18. The Sandman snores deeply, halfway slumped against the edge of the fountain, robe soaked with green potion water, while Zero sniffs at his white hair to be sure he's asleep. Relief swells inside me like a carnival balloon, too large for my chest to contain. Zero floats back to my side, and I run my palm down his ghostly fur, then rub behind his ears. You did good. My insides are a mess with tangled up leaves and nerves wanting to cry and shout and laugh all at once, wanting oddly enough to sleep. I've put the Sandman to sleep, but I can't be sure it will break whatever sleeping spell he has cast on all the towns and even the human world. I have stopped him, but I don't know if I have saved anyone. I squint across the town square and beyond the fountain through the dizzying late morning sunlight. There's movement. Hildegrim begins to stir, her long spiked fingers wagging, nose twitching. At the steps of Town Hall, the mayor raises slowly, squinting, rubbing at his eyes, then spinning his scowling face around to rub at the other set of eyes. The four vampire brothers raise to their feet, blinking at the ghastly daylight, and the vampire prince turns his head to one side, cracking his neck. What a night of sleep. What a wonderful night to sleep, he proclaims, lifting his black umbrella to shield his face from the morning sun. I had the worst dream, Hildegrim remarks, from the other side of town square, helping Zeldaborn up where she had been slumped in the doorway of their shop. I dreamt that all our warts... I dreamt that we lost all our warts, and that two handsome princes had fallen in love with us. Yuck, Zeldaborn says. Sounds more like a nightmare. Well, what's the difference between a bad dream and a nightmare? Moving on for sanity's sake. But after that, I had no dreams at all, Hildegrim added, scratching at the tip of her long nose. It was just darkness. I can't remember any of my dreams either, Zeldaborn answers. Me neither, guys, and that's personally, I can never remember any of my dreams. But I have insomnia and can rarely ever sleep. Me neither, replies the mayor, his face jerking around to show his deep scowl. The residents of Halloween Town are stirring, but they are googled-eyed and sore from sleeping in odd positions, bone-bent places. They mutter about the darkness they felt while they slept in deep sense of falling into a bottomless black hole. A fate worse than death, the worst man remarked, scratching behind one of his ears with his paw. The Sandman is asleep. He's no longer stealing their dreams, and now they're all awake. The leaves of my chest roar against my fabric ribs. My eyes flash away from the Sandman, and I run up the street towards home, Zero right behind me. I push through the iron gate, darting up the stone steps and through the front door, letting it slam back against the wall. At the top of the spiral stairs, I find Jack in our room, but he's still asleep. I sink down beside him, taking his hand in mine. Jack, I say, with a whisper at the back of my throat, wake up. Yet he doesn't move. Please, Jack. My hands begin to tremble. No, no. The others are awake. Why isn't he? I bend over him, pressing my mouth to his. Please, I mutter against his lips. I don't want to be alone anymore. At this time, I feel him stir beneath me. His hands squeeze mine, then his fingertips are in my long ragdoll hair, and he kisses me back. Tears stream down my cheek, dripping onto his bone-cold face. What's wrong, my wife? He asks. Why are you crying? He wipes at the tears with his fingertips, but they continue to fall onto the bed, coating the blanket like dewdrops. I don't know if you'd ever wake up. He raises slowly, still holding my hand, and leans forward to the edge of the bed. I had the deepest sleep, but no dreams at all. And then he pauses, looking over me. I could hear your voice in the darkness calling out to me. Zero floats around the bed, barking happily to see Jack awake, and Jack strokes his skeleton hands against Zero's white fur. I don't know why I said strike. Jack wouldn't hit Zero. He's a good boy. I tried to wipe the tears away, but more come to take their place. You were asleep for many days, I tell him, nearly choking on the words and looking away to the window, remembering everything that happened since our honeymoon. All the other realms I've seen, my time in Dreamtown, my parents. Something happened, I said softly. I found a new doorway behind the hinterland grove, and I accidentally left it open. Jack's eyes brighten, and he drops his hands from Zero. You found a new door? Where does it lead? I swallow, feeling a new ache rising up into my throat, and the loss that comes with it. A place called Dreamtown. How wonderful. Jack stands from the bed, blinking down at me, but I shake my head. I set loose a monster, the Sandman, I confess. He put you all to sleep, along with everyone in the human world. He was stealing your dreams. The tears start to gather heavy against my eyelids, the fabric unable to contain them. I was the only one still awake, so I went to Dreamtown to find a way to stop him. And the word shudder sliced through me. Jack, I met my parents. They live in Dreamtown. They're the governors, and I was born. I was never built by Dr. Finkelstein at all. I sweep at my eyes, brushing all the wetness. He kidnapped me and brought me here to Halloween Town when I was young. Jack's mouth turns down sharp, anger rising up inside him. He kidnapped you. His flattened eyes cut to the doorway like he's going to dart from the room and go in search of Dr. Finkelstein this very moment. I never trusted him. Never liked how he treated you, but to think that he kidnapped you, his expression softens a little, eyes lifting. Take me to the doorway, he says. I want to meet your parents. I want to know where you're from. I shake my head, and the hurt finds me again. The gut-deep pain of discovering my parents, then losing them just as quickly, still a fresh wound in my linen heart. They were afraid of the Sandman. They were afraid the Sandman would return to their realm. So they destroyed their grove of trees and their doorway into the human world. I let my eyes fall close. I can never go back there, never see my parents again. Jack pulls me back into his arms as if he could absorb the pain and take it away from me. And I know I would do it all over again. I would leave Dreamtown and never return 1,000 times just to be here with Jack, to touch his face, to feel his ice cold lips to mine, to have a life with him in this town, to stand beside him as Pumpkin Queen. This is the life I want, the one I'm willing to sacrifice everything for. At last he looks down at me. Where is the Sandman now? I put him to sleep, I say, against Jack's chest. He's in the fountain. You came back here alone to stop him? I nod. I had to put everything right. Jack pulls me tight against him like he's afraid to let me go. You saved us, he says, but I shake my head. It's my fault the Sandman put you all to sleep in the first place. I left the door open, I let him into our town, and all the others. I almost ruined everything. No, Jack says. You saved Halloween Town. He kisses me again, folding me in his arms. Whew, the place I want to stay for 1,000 years. When I first discovered Dreamtown, I wasn't sure where I belonged, where my true home was, but now I know. Sometimes home is a town. Home is a town, a house with 4 walls. Other times, it's 2 hollow eyes and a skull. A skeleton without a heartbeat. It's here, not in Dreamtown or Halloween Town, but in Jack's arms. I'm sorry, that's just absolutely freaking adorable. Folded against his hollow skeleton chest is where I belong. I let the tears stream down my face. I let them bind us together, salt and water and fabric and bone, woven parts of ourselves that become one. After the moment has stretched out and become thin, Jack pulls away and says, "Take me to the tree you found." There's no point, I say. We can't travel through it. Jack touches my nose with his fingertips and smiles. I want to see for myself. Back outside, a crowd has gathered around the Sandman, still asleep against the side of the stone fountain. He snores like a gland rattling window pane. The witch sisters fuss with his clothing as if they're considering stealing his long white robe, while Lock, Stock, and Barrel poke at his ribs with a stick. The vampire brothers stand in a tight circle discussing the matter fussily, seriously. The Sandman's sleeping body is a matter to be dealt with. I feel a sharp sense of relief seeing the residents of Halloween Town rising to their feet after days and days of undreaming slumber. Can't talk. No English. Please move on. No habla español. I had so desperately wanted to flee Halloween Town, the people in it, and all the obligations of being queen, but now a new feeling stirs in my leaves, in my lowest ribs, joy. It's rattling through me, and I find that I can't imagine a life without these ghouls and ghosts and grisly townsfolk. They are my friends, so awful as they might be. As awful as they might be. They are my family, but before we discuss what should be done with the sleeping Sandman, Jack and I slip away from the borders of the town, away from the Sandman and the town square, passing through the narrow Reveling bridge into the Spin Woods. When we reach the grove of trees, I lead Jack deeper into the forest, where the crescent moon door stands alone in a tucked separated. Oh, alone in a thicket separated from the circle of 7 holiday doors. Vines and shrubble are still knotted around it, threatening to grow back over the doorway and conceal it for another unknown number of years. "You're from this world," Jack asks, resting a bony hand against the door. "A place called Dreamtown." Zero hovers beside us, watching Jack. I nod yes. Jack touches the doorknob a golden color, then pulls it open. I hold my breath, hoping, but inside there's only darkness carved whole. Muted, lifeless, a drowsy wind or scent of lavender and caramel tea swirling out from inside. The threshold to Dreamtown is long gone. He closes the door again, and I feel the flicker of hope severing inside me. Grow small and thin like a pebble. The doorway is dead. Even Jack can't restore what's been torn down and destroyed. The connection between two worlds shattered. There's no way back. I'll never see my parents again. I'm a daughter lost and then found and lost again. I'm sorry, Jack said when he looks back at me. His own expression sunk like he feels the loss as deeply as I do. He folds his fingers through mine, and we walk back through the woods, the forest crackling and swaying overhead, familiar in its howl in the late autumn chill. We leave the crescent moon tree behind. A worthless tree stands where a door once did. We cross the bridge to the cemetery, passing the stone mausoleum where I stepped through the doorway from the human world. Jack stops as if a ghost or thought has just sprinted through him. "How did you know the human world was asleep?" he asked. "I saw it. I went to the human world." "Oh, you went to the human world?" "Yes." I smile a little. Jack grins to impress as thought. He's surprised by my fearlessness. "Which town?" "I'm not sure, but there was a queen, and she was marvelous. I remember the feeling of her hand beneath mine, the noble, defined expression of her features in her portrait. Although she was asleep, I admit, but I imagine she is just as marvelous when she's awake." Jack releases my hand and looks at the mausoleum cobwebs slung in the upper corner, dead leaves clotted in the doorway. "We should go make sure." "Make sure what?" "That their queen is awake." He glances back at me. "Now that you put the Sandman to sleep, we should make sure the human world has woken up, too." He holds his hands out to me. "You want to come with me?" His face makes an odd expression, like he's keeping a secret. "Sally, you've traveled to more realms in these last few days than I have in a year. I think you're the one who should lead the way. I step forth and reach out for the door. Jack and I will travel to the human world together. We will see if the Queen and her people have awakened, and maybe when Halloween arrives in less than a week, I will travel with him then too. No longer left behind on Halloween night waiting for him to return. We will mark the holiday together as king and queen. I touch the door handle, the same door I passed through only hours earlier, feeling the chill waiting on the other side, the tomb dark air that will swallow us up. But before I can pull it wide, the door is suddenly being pushed outwards towards me. The heavy stone grid against the earth, the cold, entombed wind rushes out through the opening. Zero begins to growl as if certain another villain is about to step into our world. I stagger back, startled, but then stop short, squinting into the dark opening as a figure appears, then another. Two people step through the mausoleum doorway, emerging into the cemetery. I feel my mouth fall open, eyes unblinking. What is it? Jack starts, bewilderment etched into his bony lines of his forehead. The two figures step into the sunlight, dusting themselves off as if the journey was a perilous, untended one. My parents, standing before us, looking a little startled by their new surroundings, standing in a graveyard in Halloween Town. Sally, my mother says, her voice teetering, then falls apart, and before I can manage a single word, she's moving towards me, drawing me into her broad, familiar arms, her skin smooth and fresh lavender in her eyes wet at the corners. Oh, her skin smelling of fresh lavender. I don't understand, I murmur into her long, coppery hair. I thought you destroyed the library doorway after I left. She holds me out at arm's length, bottom lip quivering. We convinced the others to wait, she said. If there was a chance you could stop the Sandman, we had to give you time to try. We lost you once, we couldn't do it again. My father chimes in, touching my arms where it's folded around Mother, and I realize it was wrong of us to let you go and face the Sandman alone. You came through the human world, I said, eyes wide, still trying to understand, to make sense of my parents standing before me. Was everyone still asleep? No, Mother answered. We saw a young man awaken in the cemetery that we passed through to get here. It was rather difficult to avoid being seen during the daylight, but we managed it. Jack steps forward, shoulders drawn back, arms outstretched. Mr. and Mrs. Governor, he says, I'm Jack Skellington, Sally's husband. It's marvelous to finally meet you. My father takes Jack's hand, shaking it while wholeheartedly, the Pumpkin King, he replies. Good, good. But then my father's expression dips. If you're awake too, does that mean the Sandman? I nod. He's asleep in town square. Are you sure? Mother asks. A flicker of hopefulness in her eyes. Come and see. Break the 7th seals and unleash the apocalypse. That is the end of chapter 18. We will pick this back up at a later date. Thank you all so much for coming along with me on this journey. I do love this book. We are almost at the finish line. And then I'll be giving my final thoughts on the book overall. Please leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff for me down below. It really does help my channel grow. Thank you all so much for your time and have a beautiful day. Goodbye.